Hello, everyone. I hope you guys are having a great day today. Welcome to the first, or should I say, second episode of Forensics Tea. I am your host, and my name is Jacqueline Martinez, but you guys can call me Jackie. As I said before in my other podcast, my first podcast, I am a college student who is taking a class in forensics, and throughout the semester, I will be reflecting on assignments my professor provided me related to forensic science. Based on these reflections, I will cover current events and famous crimes that are related. In this episode, I want to cover Learning Module 3, Longcard's Exchange, and reflect on this principle. I will discuss a famous crime related to this principle and a current event on how the forensics community views this technique today. For the first segment of my podcast, I will be doing my reflection, and my reflection is based on Learning Module 3, Longcard's Exchange Principle. In Learning Module 3, Longcard's Exchange Principle, in our assignment, we the students had to wear a shirt for the whole day and then later on observe and investigate traces of material that were left in our garments throughout the day. At the beginning of this project, I questioned the reason for this, then suddenly realized we collect random traces of evidence throughout the day. The reason I chose this topic to discuss is that during this assignment, I became very curious about what the term Longcard's Exchange Principle meant. So like many of you listening might be wondering, well, Jackie, what does this interesting term mean? Based on the How the Longcard's Exchange Principle Works article that I researched, it is generally understood by, with contact between two items, there is an exchange, which was said by Longcard. So basically, if you don't understand, this means that no matter what the criminal does or crime he or she committed, there will be evidence left behind. To further my curious needs, I wanted to know the mastermind behind this. So the person who created this principle, Dr. Edmund Longcard, who I believe was a forensic science investigator. I myself am surprised I got out of my way to look up this information in the first place, which is good because now I am able to use this information to hopefully educate you guys a bit more, and I am able to put it in my podcast. In the second segment of my podcast, I want to discuss a famous crime. A famous crime I would like to introduce you guys to is the case of the Waimea children murders. This is a famous case that was conducted by Edmund Longcard, the one who created the Longcard's principle, exchange principle, and uses this principle during the case. So I would like to tell you guys a little backstory behind this. So in Germany, two children in the name of Carolina and Melanie Waimea went missing, and a couple of days later were found dead in the year 1986. Two people, the mother and father, were suspected for the murders. But as time went on, the mother became more suspicious of killing her two children and was serving her sentence and released in 2006, almost 30 years later. What was so interesting about this case were the fibers found in clothes and bed sheets. It is vital in the forensics community to find out what clothes the suspects and victims were wearing. Going back to my reflection, Longcard's exchange principle is based on every contact leaves a trace. I became overwhelmed with surprise as I examined the amount of various fabrics and random objects found in my shirt. Such items were threads, hair, even fabric from my couch, or pet hair that were found in my shirt, all over my shirt. I can imagine the overwhelming evidence found in both the criminal and the victims, because in this case, you have to look for both the criminal and the victims of any evidence. This can be complicated, though, because if it were the case that the parents had something to do with their murders, I mean, their parents, of course, they're going to be around their kids every day. They are bound to leave some sort of fabric or imprint of themselves in their children. So I guess that can't really be a credible source, but, it could be kind of helpful. But there are other ways evidence, such as fabric from the children in the bed sheets, can be useful. In this specific case, it can be used to determine one of the victim's time of death. According to the article I mentioned earlier, while conducting my research, it was mentioned that the fibers were identified in one of the daughters, improved the mother's claim. More fibers were taken from Monica's shirt, about 35, and one on her bedsheet. But as investigators tested the theory, only between 6 and 10 fibers were on the sheet. Yeah, talk about disproving that claim. She gave one of her daughters a hug. Disproving a claim that one of her daughters gave a hug to her. Another theory was tested where they found over 200 fibers in the family's rear seat in a car, which disproves the theory that they were killed in the front seat of the car. Another theory that was disproved was that no sand was found in their bodies, so that disproves the theory that they were playing in the playground. I believe this case is still unsolved though, despite the disproving evidence and improving evidence they found. Moving on to our final segment of my podcast, I will describe a current crime related to the long cards exchange principle and how it is still used today and still very vital to the forensics community. So this crime that I described to you guys happened more than 30 years ago. So what about today? Do we still use long cards exchange principle in our society today? And if so, how? Well, while conducting research on current events, I tried to find cases that where they include long cards methods. But it seems like most investigators use this principle already because it is the easiest way to find a credible resource, or it is a credible resource we still use today. Which is weird because I found it difficult to find current sources using this principle. But nonetheless, I did find a case in Ohio. A case I found actually earlier today was the case of the Wagner family, Tupike County Massacre. Trace evidence examiner testifies. So, a criminal investigation analysis against George Wagner in September 27, 2022. 4 years later, there was a theory where the Wagner family wore Walmart shoes to carry out 8 murders. They wanted to gain custody of one of their daughters, and they ended up killing 2 separate families. So these shoes were left in the oppression that the jury and in Ohio. Though they pled not guilty, even though prosecutors say this was the first case of trace evidence, which goes back to the long cards exchange principle, which is basically trace evidence. But after some time, the who was the examiner back in 2016, wanted to cut some flooring to that was left so we can analyze it. Elliott commented that some of the impressions were left in blood, while others lifted flooring, fingerprint dust, and gel lifts. So she ended up comparing the impressions with the threads of the shoes that were left by the victims. So she took the effort to locate the mystery shoe imprints left in the crime scene. She said she found the shoes at Walmart and was like, aha, yes, because these shoes had the same patterns as the shoes left in the crime scene. She had recognized the patterns. And then later on set, they found footage of Angela Wagner, the wife of the Wagner family, buying shoes. Elliott's testimony was interrupted Tuesday morning, improved the mother's claim. More fibers were taken from Monica's shirt, about 35, and one on her bedsheet. But as investigators tested the theory, only between 6 and 10 fibers were on the sheet. Yeah, talk about disproving that claim. She gave one of her daughters a hug. Disproving a claim that one of her daughters gave a hug to her. Another theory was tested where they found over 200 fibers in the family's rear seat in a car, which disproves the theory that they were killed in the front seat of the car. Another theory that was disproved was that no sand was found in their bodies, so that disproves the theory that they were playing in the playground. I believe this case is still unsolved though, despite the disproving evidence and improving evidence they found. In conclusion, I really did enjoy researching cases from all over America and the world and becoming more educated on serious subjects like this. I really enjoy having new information in my noggin and being introduced to new ideas of forensic science that I didn't know before. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast and learned this new information just like I did. Have a good day and see you guys next month for my third podcast where I will be reflecting famous crimes and current events.